Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tom Suter. I am the CEO of the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center, and we've got a great panel for you today, furthering cybersecurity within the state and local government using digital modernization. And this is actually a really special day for us at ATARC. ATARC, the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center, we've been primarily a federal organization. We've been working with the federal government. And we started crossing over with the state and local so much, we decided, working with our friends here at GitLab, to really launch a webinar series covering the state and local. And I think in cybersecurity, it's very, very good timing. As many of you know, the bipartisan infrastructure framework was passed, and it's chock full a lot of infrastructure concerning cybersecurity with the state and federal constituents. There's like $1 billion slated for state and local, a cybersecurity grant funding program, and it's working with CISA, an advisory role, and FEMA. These are two agencies we've worked with quite a bit. So it's really good, timely topic here. And if all my everybody can come online, we'll begin in a second. So want to welcome all the attendees. Special thanks to the GitLab team for helping us put this together. They've been a great partner. We do a lot with them on the federal and now on the state side. And what we're planning on doing is have the discussion here in the morning, in the beginning, and then we're going to have some poll questions. One of the things we do here at ATARC is that we give CP credits, and a lot of that has to be tied into poll just to get the interaction. And these polls are very interesting, and it's going to set the conversation with us. So really, really excited about all that. And so I'm going to do some quick introductions, and then each of the panelists that we got a superstar panel for you. This is going to be a really great webinar to kick off our state and local series today. But we have with us Teresa Stillwell, Chief Information Officer from the Florida Department of Veterans Affairs. If you want to wave a little bit, Teresa, thank you for joining us. And we have Jason Cavendish, Deputy Chief Security Officer, State of Michigan Department of Technology Management and Budget. Thank you for joining us today, Jason. And we also have Andy Brush, Cybersecurity Partnerships for the State of Michigan Department of Technology Management and Budget. Welcome, Andy. And we also have Christopher Simmons, Director of Cybersecurity Research Support at the University of Texas in Dallas. So we got a little. Good
afternoon, guys.
Stuff. Yes, and I did hear, Chris, you were talking about you work during the week and then you do your fun research on the weekend. I did catch that one. Sorry, I wanted to get that out. That's the kind of guy he is. He has fun by doing research on the weekend. We also have Tony Riddick, Chief Information Officer, State of New York Office of Information Technology Services. Welcome, Tony. And Ray Yeats, Chief Information Security Officer, Texas Department of Family and Protective Services. Good afternoon, Ray. Actually, yeah, it's still afternoon for you. I forgot we got time zone things going on now. Yeah, we kind of get this DC-centric thing going a little too much, I think. And last but certainly not least, representing the industry perspective, we have Joel Kruswick, who's Senior Manager of Solutions Architecture at GitLab. So why don't we, thanks for joining us, Joel, and we look forward to, you guys always do a great job with these cross-agency industry perspectives. So thank you for joining us today on this topic. And Teresa, love to, it looks like are you in the office today?
Yes, I am.
And where is your office? Is it in Tallahassee?
No, it's in Largo,
Okay,
Florida.
Great. Fantastic. And I'm looking forward to hearing about some of the things that you're trying to do on this topic with cybersecurity.
Thank you.
Are you good? Are you got some audio?
Are you talking to me?
Oh, yeah. If you don't mind,
Okay.
just a few comments
Oh,
about this.
yeah. Okay, so
Real quick.
I'm new.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, I just
Go ahead.
joined the agency, and they had a lot of manual processes in place, which I've just completed an assessment. I just came out of the higher ed spectrum, so I'm accustomed to doing this type of work for different colleges and universities across the United States and Canada. So what I found is that although they had some automation, or some tools, I should say, in place here, none of it is automated. It's all still a manual process. So that's what we're looking to do in the next 5 years. It's not going to take 5 years, but the budget reasons why some of the stuff has never been done here before. So I'm really excited to hear about the investment in cybersecurity for for the state and local agencies.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing more about that when that goes. And I'd love to do a panel get you guys back here when we get to our federal counterparts, how this is really going to work. Because you see something in a bill, you got the devil's in the details. Well, thank you. And which universities were you at?
I was at several universities, so it's not just one. I think there were 3 in the state of Florida. I've been to Colorado, Washington, Minnesota, Canada, Texas,
Wow.
Yeah, and Idaho. There's a lot. New Jersey, New York. So yeah, there's a lot of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pit stops in that space. I actually worked for UCF for a little bit and
You
worked
did?
with them up here. They're great. Yeah, you all have a really good network. I'm very familiar with the Florida system. Thank you, and thank you for joining us. Next, maybe go with you, Jason. You can introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your work and some of your perspectives.
Sure. So I'm a little different than Teresa. I came from private sector into state and local government, state government in particular, about 3.5 years ago. Started in state government as a security architect, and then have migrated to the role of deputy chief security officer, which is basically the right hand or left hand of the chief security officer for the state. Previous to that, I was very involved in industry from insurance, property casualty, health insurance, and financial services sectors, and helping secure those groups and agencies with federal contracts, and bringing them into the world of what federal information security looks like when you're a private sector organization. And that was always fun with regards to authorization to operates, FedRAMP, and those kind of things coming forward. Yeah. So that's kind of a little bit of my background and a little history of how I got here. Since I've been here at the state, I've worked in everything from enterprise architecture, solution assessments, zero trust architecture, road mapping, Devsecops, and a variety of public sector and private citizen outreach programs.
Great, thank you for that. And next we'll go to Christopher Simmons, Director of Cybersecurity Research Support at the University of Texas in Dallas. Welcome,
thank you very much, Tom. So I'm Dr. Christopher S. Simmons, but just call me Chris. As Tom mentioned, I run the Supercomputing Support Center. I'm also faculty in computer science and physics, and that's why my PhD is in chemistry. I'm a computational chemist by training, and sort of the first 20 years of my academic career I spent as research faculty doing research, sort of sitting at the intersection of high performance computing, software, architecture, algorithms, and been using GitLab since about 2010. I'm also a developer of C4, a large open source software ecosystem for doing computational chemistry. And I historically did a lot of work with the DOE Exascale and the weapons program. But a couple of years ago, I decided I want to stop working in that area and really help train people on how to do research computing reliably, reproducibly, and securely. So in addition to my work at UT Dallas, I'm also one of the lead developers and on the leadership team for OpenHPC. OpenHPC is the largest open source ecosystem for building supercomputers. We get about 40,000 downloads a month, and we're currently at 90+% of R1 universities. Finally, I'm PI of a new NSF-funded Center of Excellence called Trekkies. It's named after the derogatory term for a Star Trek nerd. And Trekkies is meant to bring research computing support to the larger UT system schools, focusing on equitable research computing access. Now, historically, research computing at the campus level all happens behind the scenes on the 10.net network, right? On our private network, on our VPN, and securing that is really easy. But most modern science workloads requires multiple scientists and research groups from multiple universities, and they have to collaborate. And we have this approach that security and usability are inversely proportional, at least historically. But there's a lot of things we can do now to bring new tools to bear, and I do most of those through GitLab. So modern collaboration requires publicly routed solutions, but we still need to be secure because the attacks are coming constantly. So I've been adopting DevOps and Devsecops for two reasons. I'm basically bringing these tools to science. One, cybersecurity is the topic of these webinars, and the tool of Devsecops and that secure the public cloud are very effective. We don't run our workloads in the public cloud because it's too expensive for research computing, right? Research computing has petabytes of storage and change in the couch cushions to fund it. So we've built a sort of our own research cloud in our data center. The second reason we use DevOps for science is for reproducibility. There's a big dirty secret in computational science. 90+% of it is not reproducible. And when I read a paper on computational science, all the details about the software, the knobs they turned, and how they ran the workflow aren't necessarily captured. And I would contend that if it's not reproducible, it's not science. So additionally, we're using DevOps and the tools of automation, things like CI/CD within GitLab, containerization, to capture all the metadata and using these tools in the cybersecurity realm for doing science.
No, that's fantastic. I think you're some kind of like unicorn, worried, researchers worried about security. They haven't been in that field. That's not at the top of their list of things to worry about. I like the reproducibility aspect. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm a unicorn, although some faculty would say I'm a pain in their side because I make them concerned about security.
Thank you, Dr. Simmons. And next we'll go with back to the state of Michigan. Let's go with Andy Brush, who's Cybersecurity Partnerships, State of Michigan Department of Technology Management and Budget.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, glad to be here. So I joined the state of Michigan about 2.5 years ago after spending 17 years IT director in a county within Michigan. And during that 17 years, we, in counties and local government, began to latch on to cybersecurity as this emerging threat that had come first as you better watch out for it, and it might be coming, to conferences where we said, raise your hand if you've been hit, and then everybody starts raising their hands. And each year you do it, more and more hands go up, and we're, looking to each other because that's kind of what we do. It's too hard to figure everything out on our own. So we started working together on how to, develop or find cybersecurity frameworks and assessments and tools and things like that, share information that would mean that we wouldn't each have to figure it out on our own. And so when the opportunity came to join the state, I joined the state and am doing basically the same thing. My favorite part of my old job, which is working with the local K-12, local governments and others to build partnerships between the state of Michigan, between each other, and help improve the cybersecurity posture of every single of the 2,500 plus local entities in the state of Michigan.
Great. Thank you for that, Andy. And next we'll go with Tony.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tony Riddick from the state of New York. A shout out to Matt Fusner out there, one of my former colleagues and students at the National Defense University. My bio is a little different probably than most of you here. I started off as an infantry officer after graduating from a military college, went over to command transportation units and realized that if I have a robust military career, I probably can't do anything with transportation and infantry. So I decided to be an information systems person. Throughout my career, I've evolved as an IT guru, if you will. One of the most significant jobs I held down the road was to run the Army's help desk in the Pentagon. That's after I've been to the Army's information security school, as well as systems automation course. So I was baptized by fire, if you will, in IT, doing it in a military operational setting, as well as teaching at the National Defense University in Washington, DC. I taught cybersecurity from a domain perspective. And if you understand how the military looks at war fighting, we look at it from domains, the air domain, the sea domain, the space domain, and now we've added the cyber domain. So we looked at IT leadership as well. I taught as a professor of systems management and IT leadership, and my focus has been information technology leadership. I leave it up to the technicians to do the technical things, but working from an idle base, understanding how systems are put together and how we have to manage these systems in terms of capacity management, of course, security management, device management, and all those things associated with running an enterprise has been my emphasis. I was blessed after a 30-year career with having the opportunity to be the CIO of the United States Virgin Islands. Now, I say blessed, but it's a double-edged sword. I became known as the disaster recovery guru after 2 Category 5 hurricanes hit the islands back in 2017. I spent a good bit of my time trying to recover the infrastructure and learned along the way. I've been here in New York for about 12 months now. In a couple of weeks, it'll be 12 months. Great experience. My first emphasis has always been people, understanding my staff, and then getting in concert with my chief information security officer, understanding the fluidity, if you will, of the cyber responsibility at a huge enterprise level. We have 19 million citizens, 130,000 state employees, and a hell of an infrastructure. We have our own hybrid cloud system, and we do a number of things. I rely on my staff, from my communications officer to my chief financial officer, to give me the guidance and information I need to succeed. I'm not a one-man show. I do like IT, but I like IT leadership more than anything else. We can talk about all of those intricacies that make IT work, particularly security, systems development, application development, engineering, and infrastructure management. But I'm more on the leadership side. I think it's important to develop and train my people to make sure that they give the state the best of what they have to give and exploit their potential. Never am I the smartest man in the room. And I'll end with that. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tony, for that. And thank you for your service. I know we have Veterans Day tomorrow. Appreciate that. My son is actually in the Army. He's in Signal Corps in Seoul right now. So he's kind of going down a similar path with you on the technology side. So thank you. Thank you for that. Next, we have Ray Yeats, and I'm hoping I'm saying that right, Ray, Chief Information Security Officer, Texas Department of Family and Protective Services.
Thank you, Tom. And yes, you said it right. Well, I'm used to just jipes, wipes, jeeps, you name it. So it's all good. Anyhow, I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for the state of Texas, for the Department of Family and Protective Services. I've been in this role for the last 5 years. Prior to that, I was a fractional CISO for a Fortune 50 company with 984,000 employees. And prior to that, I was also the CISO for a Fortune 200 company, okay, with 65,000 employees. So coming to the Department of Family and Protective Services, it was like, oh my God, that's just a location, okay, of one of these big companies, okay, that I work for, you know, because we only have about 15,000 employees, okay, for the agency. DFPS is the third largest agency in the state of Texas. And I'm a graduate of Sam Houston State University, where I obtained a bachelor's degree in computer science and a master's degree in criminal justice, which I thought, okay, was the perfect blend, okay, of, you know, a computer, okay, and security, you know, and that has been very helpful for me. I've been in an executive role, okay, for the last 17 years ago of my professional career, so I don't do the hands-on anymore. Regarding, Tom, the digital modernization for the federal and state level and local governments, in my opinion, okay, there are 3 key elements when it comes to that. First one is cloud first. I mean, we have to start migrating to the cloud. That's one of the first things, okay, or one of the first steps, okay, that most agencies have taken forward towards the idea, okay, of modernization, okay, within the agency. Second one is DevOps, which Chris, okay, mentioned earlier, okay, being when people think of DevOps, okay, most people are thinking, okay, of tools and technologies, okay, I mean, because that's the first thought, okay, that comes to mind when you're thinking, okay, of digital modernization. You just go with the tools and technology. What some people don't realize, okay, that I can give you all the tools, all the new technology, but if you do not change your process, your existing process and procedure, all those tools and that technology will not work. And that's one of the biggest headache, Tom, with modernization, okay, within the government, because we are operating on all processes, all procedures. And to me, that's a big key element. And the third element, okay, is data center consolidation initiative. And most people are starting to do that, okay, which is, like it says, you need to start consolidating, okay, your data centers. So that's my take, okay, I mean, for the three elements, okay, for modernization, okay, within the state at least.
Great, thank you for that. And we'll go ahead with you, Joel, Senior Manager of Solutions Architect, GitLab, Joel Kruswick. Am I saying that okay?
You are, and congratulations on that. Anytime there's four consonants together, people usually blur that in whatever way you can possibly imagine, right? So I have the same problem with my name. I would just like to share a couple quick things. So one is I've been around GitLab for about 4 years. Those of you familiar with GitLab know that's about a lifetime in the career of our product. It's been quite a journey with the company, and I've been thrilled to be a part of it. I came up through the QA world. So basically my goal in life is to help people not have the experience that I had in development 15 years ago, right? That was just something that when the product came over the wall, my goal was within 24 hours to have it back at development to fix the thing. That's a terrible way to go through life. I don't wish that on anyone. So what I do here is I work with civilian agencies and state and local and education, working through application development and modernization efforts. So we're here to just kind of walk through that with folks, find out where they are, where they want to be, help them get there. And as Ray said, that starts with culture, which, yes, I work for a product company, but it really does start with culture. I loved seeing that NIST recently put the same thing out in their documentation. So it's a pleasure to be here with all of you experts today.
Great. Before we get to the first couple of poll questions, we did get a good question from somebody from the audience, and I kind of want to tie that into, we've had this COVID thing for the last 2 years. So it's a combination of digital transformation as well as cybersecurity threats. I'd love to hear from each of you how that's been working out and some of the challenges, and even a detailed answer at this point is probably pretty good to get caught up on that. And we'll go ahead and start with you, Teresa, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. So digital transformation is one of the things as part of that review that I mentioned earlier. There's a lot involved with that. The entire plan has not been put together yet, but when COVID hit, I was not working at this agency. However, the process was, I believe IT worked for like 2 months remote, and that was it. And then after that, they had to come back into the office because we have a lot of nursing homes throughout the state, and that's our primary focus. And what we support is our veterans that are in the nursing homes. So you can imagine that the nursing homes couldn't just shut down, right? So there's a lot involved in that. So we had to be like front and center on the line, making sure that our veterans were taken care of and our staff had the tools that they needed to perform their duties. However, COVID produced a lot of paper, which this agency is prone for anyway. So one of the first things we're going to do is abolish all paper and go digital. That's one of the goals that we have to get through. But you have to take into consideration that you have people that have worked here for like 20 years and paper is all they know. They do not understand electrical signals or anything like that, or, you know, development, where the security gaps are, like the Devsecops model, and they for sure do not know what agility is. So it's a big feat that we're undertaking in IT. Also because there's a gap in the skill level as well. So.
Well, I think it was the Business Week predicted the end of paper in the office, and I think that was 1976 that prediction came out. So we still haven't figured that one out yet. We're getting a little closer, but we haven't figured that out.
That's when I was born.
Now you're yeah, that was a good year, bicentennial year. I was definitely alive then. Colonel Riddick, how did New York State, I mean, just with all the services that you have, you know, how challenging was that to you know, this remote environment?
Well, I'll tell you what, one of the most interesting stories in my journey is I arrived here in December of last year, 2020, and I arrived in the middle of the pandemic shift. And I say shift because we had already shifted to remote work. And quite frankly, we're still just at 50% return to work now. So the culture of New York State government has changed in reaction to what the pandemic offered to us. One of the biggest challenges is converting those CARES dollars and all of that funding that was put together to assist in COVID relief, for instance, unemployment insurance, rental and housing program funding, and all of those funds that were put in place. We're a bit different than a lot of the states in that we do a lot of development ourselves. Now, we contract out with vendors to help us put together applications to support the citizen and to support the infrastructure. But I will tell you, we were moving 24/7 with regards to developing applications, providing the security needed, working with vendors who would have coordinated with an agency independent of ITS. Therefore, we had to come on the back end and do the bolted on security aspect of it with pen testing and scanning and whatnot from an outside perspective. Of course, you always want to bake in your security, but we found ourselves, because of the speed of the support that we needed to provide, we found ourselves reacting as opposed to being proactive. We finally slowed down now, where we have a chance to catch our breaths, and we're looking at our cyber resources with regards to how we can secure our infrastructure, keep it secure, but keep moving forward. I always say, and Matt might remember this, the greatest challenge in cyber is fixing the tire with the car rolling. Forget all about this, build an airplane in flight. That's just not doable, okay? That's just a nice, sexy phrase that somebody came up with. But realistically, we're trying to fix this tire, pull out the jack, do everything we need to do while we're staying in between the lines and driving. So that means during the development phase, Devops, of course, is very important. We have to integrate the security in. And with the amount of money we have, the flexibilities in the work schedule, the new culture that we have as a result of remote working and the challenges therein to come, it's exciting. So I'm glad to be in New York, and let's just leave it like that for right now. Catch me next year, my hair will be all gray, but I guarantee you it'll be a hell of a ride for sure.
Yeah, you'll be like after like the Civil War, you see the generals 8 years later, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Fantastic, thank you for that. Jason?
Yeah, I think I've heard a couple of things that I can draw attention to. And one is, you know, I in chat responded to a question and I mentioned zero trust architecture. And then we've heard a lot about Devsecops. And I think a couple of things should be pointed out. Both of those are cultural change things. They're not products you can buy or you know, frameworks you can kind of follow. They're how do you create that working environment within your culture, and then it's what products can I use to help me. So I think, you know, Joel and Chris would both kind of chime in and say that GitLab has been extremely helpful in helping them create that culture, and they use that to create those cultures in other organizations from a DevSecOps perspective. We have a big, hairy, audacious goal to be able to do 4.0 client downtime deploys an hour at the state that we're just kicking off. And, you know, when I say that to people, they're like, 4 deploys an hour? Are you crazy? How are we ever going to do 4 deploys an hour? And the reality is that, that it's much more easily done than you think, but it requires a lot of orchestration, cultural change, and agreements up front and communication changes. And so I think that that's one of the big things to talk about there. Zero trust architecture and zero trust network architecture, a couple of topics that come up, especially around the distributed workforce, especially with regards to zero trust network architecture being kind of a replacement for VPN or a new way to connect to our remote environments, and gives us new ways to do hybrid workforce, and having all of our systems distributed in so many different places with so many more untrusted networks than we're used to dealing with. But again, that's a cultural change, not a product you can buy. It's understanding, you know, what is your identity? How do you manage identity? How do you manage authentication? How do you manage authorization? What things are you trying to authorize access to? How are you brokering it? And all of that and more. So I think that's where I'll stop for a moment. That's a lot to unpack, and we'll let some others jump in. Thanks.
Oh, that was fantastic, Jason. How about we go with Dr. Simmons? You know, I know
All right.
it must have been culture shock there at the laboratory. I can't go into the lab anymore, right?
I mean, the majority of work that I support is computational in nature. You know, there were, of course, disruptions to the experimental labs, but, you know, you would think within computation, everyone should be able to work remotely equally. And that's not true. You know, the first thing I tell all my staff and my students is the same thing I tell my kids. You're not a beautiful, unique flower, and neither should your systems. Right? People get attached to working on a system or a desktop or a remote supercomputer, and they have so much state. They have so much invested into the manual turning of knobs that they have this huge inertia they can't overcome. So the first thing I do is I teach my staff and my students how to be stateless wherever. Whenever you're running workloads, make sure you have an automated way to generate the state of that container or that desktop or that supercomputer. And there's not things you're not capturing. The second thing that I then tell my students, which is a little philosophy, is when you're creating these workflows to automate things, don't do them procedurally, do them declaratively. That is, don't have a script that goes through steps one at a time and install things that in the future, if you run it another time, it's going to install a different version. Make sure you have some way to specify everything about that so that the declared state is specified. And then finally, I've really been emphasizing communicating asynchronously and not over email. Get everything out of email. Stop trying to have Zoom calls when everyone's working from home, because that really is an equity issue. Not everyone at home has the same environment, the same quality of the environment. They might have kids or pets or whatever running around. And so by communicating asynchronously, preferably through a ticket system, is the way we do most of our communication, is through, you know, chat, and then that's integrated into our GitLab instance. It captures all the communication in a way that guarantees it's reproducible, because you're communicating asynchronously and have referencing built in.
Great, thank you for that. And Ray, definitely want to hear from you. I mean, major challenges in your department, I can imagine.
Well, believe it or not, Tom, most people don't even know, okay, what we do. The FPS, okay, I mean, we're really child protective services and adult protective services for the state of Texas. So prior to the pandemic, okay, the agency as a whole was already mostly a remote workforce, because our people have to be able to work, okay, from Starbucks or from anywhere, because they carry the laptop, they're going, okay, to people's houses, and that's where they're performing the work. So in essence, okay, it was already, okay, we're huge, okay, already, okay, in a remote workforce. In fact, okay, we have the largest mobile from the entire state of Texas. So our agency has more mobile devices, okay, than any other agency in the state. So that was an advantage, okay, that we had. So for us to go, okay, from there to remote, it was not really very difficult at all. The only challenge, okay, we ran to was into the bandwidth. Okay, being able to provide, okay, enough bandwidth, okay, for people, okay, and all these remote connections that we're having, okay, via VPN. But we immediately switch, okay, from one provider, okay, to another one, okay, that immediately increase our bandwidth and double it, and then the issue was resolved. From a security perspective, again, we already had, okay, multi-factor authentication in place, okay, and we already had, okay, things in place. The good thing, okay, that happened, okay, from the pandemic was March 13th, okay, because remember, it was Friday the 13th, okay, when we were told, hey, everybody's working from home of 2020. We went, okay, we became telework employees. We're still 100% telework. We were changed, okay, to 100% telework. And that provided a cost saving for us because now at least the security portion of it, okay, of the agency doesn't have to have an office. Before we had a security operations center that was expensive to maintain, we don't anymore. So all my people, all my employees are working remotely right now. And we became permanent telework employees, okay, I mean, so a year ago, I believe. So it was not that bad, believe it or not. We're one of those lucky agencies, okay, that it was not as difficult as for others, you know?
Yeah, but I just remember that last Friday before pandemic. I mean, pandemic had started, obviously, but bandwidth was getting tight already. But I was in a government, I was at a military installation, and it was, everybody went home after that, and that was it. We had really gone back except in a phased approach for 2 years. Wow. Thank you for that. And
I'd like to
Andy?
comment on that bandwidth.
Yeah, go ahead.
Quite real quick. So you decided to double yours, Ray, and that was an interesting way to go about it. The reason that was happening, I think, probably is because you're backhauling all of your internet traffic back over your VPN, which we saw exactly the same thing. We were getting inundated because you were counting it twice effectively for a lot of things. And so one of the things that we did to address that is we did that dirty word called split tunneling. But the way we implemented split tunneling to make it not such a dirty word is we had a CASB in front of it, so that all of the traffic would route through the CASB that was allowed to, not backhaul. And then we only brought things back into our on-prem systems that really needed to access those systems because they were resident in our on-premise data centers and things like that. So that really helped us with that scenario. We still spend money, obviously, but we just spent it in moving more towards technologies that were going to help us with that zero trust architecture model as we move forward. So just another tidbit.
Thanks, Jason, for that. Appreciate it.
And
Andy, we'll go to you.
And by the way,
ahead,
we also had to do a split tunneling until we got the second, that was the immediate fix. Okay, we did it for the first 3 or 4 days, okay, until we were able to get, okay, I mean, our bandwidth, okay, doubled by the provider. So, but that was an immediate solution, but we did not do what you did. That's very smart, though.
Great. And Andy?
So like I said yesterday when we were getting ready, I may be the weirdo in here because I'm not going to talk about CASB or split tunneling or things like that. I'm going to talk about how the change in the pandemic has really amped up our capability of collaborating with people who aren't in the office, that aren't in our organization, in a way that came at a good time. So we were just getting started with our Cyber Partners program in the state of Michigan and had been 6 or 8 months in. So we had built good, close relationships with some folks around the state and around the office. And, Jason and I talked daily about kind of what we were working on. And then, the pandemic starts. And I remember I was on the other side of the state doing a presentation and drove by the office on Thursday and thought, well, I'll get my stuff tomorrow. And now it looks like kind of like a ghost town in my office where you just sort of abandoned it and everything's left the way it was. I think I rinsed out the coffee cups well enough. But the point is that our work with K-12 and local governments, cities, counties, and townships across the state, also working through the election security with Secretary of State and all of the local clerks that are all involved in the elections, people have accepted this way of working and collaborating outside of their organization in a way that would have been, frankly, just a ton more driving and a ton more travel time. And we've been able to build really tight relationships online. And it's just been interesting this fall, showing up at a few conferences here and there and kind of meeting my online friends. And some of them are taller than I thought, some are shorter than I thought. It's just, but it's been a tremendous thing. I'm not sure if other people have noticed that, but I mean, there's what, 50, 50 people on this call that are sort of accepting this as a way of talking to each other.
Yeah.
When like 2 years ago, you couldn't have gotten people to do it. So, and we just went all in on it.
Great point, Andy. I was at a federal conference and I realized this is the first time I met the people. And it is the tall or short thing. You recognize their face, but it's some people are taller, some people are shorter. It's funny.
But sometimes not the
Joel.
face because they're wearing masks. So we don't wear masks here. So.
Yeah. Joel?
Yeah, so the tall thing resonates with me. I'm about 6'5", and just about everybody I ran into the first time said, "What are you doing up there?" Right. So from our perspective here at GitLab, there was not much adjustment. We're a virtual company in 65 countries around the world, and as such, we don't have an office. There is no GitLab home office that I can even work from should I want to. So from that perspective, very little impact to us. But I will say the past year has us focused a lot more on two things. One being securing those users, right? There are far more attacks. In fact, my phone's gone off twice today with people trying to get me to click through to a Google form. That's a new one for me. And the other thing that we're really focused on is securing the application further. There's been some incredible headlines during the past year and a half. And we'd prefer not to be one of those. So we're running deeper, longer, broader scans than ever, which has, of course, led us to develop further in our product those capabilities as well. But that's developed from an innate need for us to provide that security to anybody who wants to work with us. And so that's been our outcome. It's a little different.
Yep. Fantastic. I'm going to hit a couple polls real quick. I get in trouble with my significant other. I get in trouble with government officials, but I don't want to get in trouble with the CPE people. You don't want that. You don't want to be on their bad list. So we got a couple questions, and then we have some good questions that have come in. So where does your agency stand on zero trust architecture? And if you're not a government employee, maybe you're servicing them, so you can just answer on behalf of the agency. Researching and start to understand the CTA will benefit. We have a couple of different things there. So let's, if we can get that real quick. Usually they're pretty quick on the trigger, our audience. So if we can pull that up, I'm kind of interested to see what they have to say. Researching, we're in the research phase. I think we're a little early on zero trust at this point. And I've seen that on the federal side. I don't know if you all, and that'll go into my next question, actually. Somebody asked a question about FedRAMP, and there's this state ramp, which I'm not familiar with. When you see a cybersecurity executive order from the president, how do you align with the federal side? Maybe we'll start off with you, Colonel Riddick. How does that guide you, NIST and these other organizations?
I have the benefit of my general counsel, who has a pretty big staff of lawyers, to take a look at these executive orders and these documents that come down from the federal side to help us define how it applies to us. Generally, we parallel the federal government with regards to policies, regulations, rules, and staying within the lines that we have to stay in as a service provider. But sometimes, like freedom of information, for instance, and the legislation behind that, and how we have to operate within our enterprise with regards to allowing agencies, individual citizens to get to that information. It is actually a technological solution that we have to employ. And you'll see, and everyone I'm sure can attest to the fact that you get these executive orders, but they don't come with any road signs or any guidance on how to implement it at the state level. So we try to mirror and stay within those guidelines, but implement the technology and the processes that are necessary to make the state of New York work.
Great, thank you for that. How about you, Dr. Stillwell?
So with us, it's interesting that you asked this question because of what just happened this week was the vaccine mandate, because we have the healthcare facilities, and we've been told we have that saying that Colonel Tony does, that where they review everything, from the federal level, try to translate it into state verbiage or language, and figure out where we're going to go from there. However, this mandate is threatening, lives as far down to where people can't even work now. If they're not vaccinated, they cannot be a state employee and work in a nursing home. That's going to be a big issue for us. So we're actually in the middle of trying to work that out right now. And as you know, we have our Ron DeSantis, he challenges every federal mandate that comes down from the state of Florida, that is affected by the state of Florida. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've seen that in the news somewhere.
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so just for our local partners, and we work very closely with CISA. So I'm talk maybe less about the mandates and more about like executive directors that come out of CISA and say everybody must apply these patches within, and then they add a date to it. We share them and talk about them probably inside the state as well as things that are really good ideas. Like, you should do these. There's no mandate that you do it. There's no teeth to it. But if CISA and the federal government is spending their time researching this and telling us that these things are being actively exploited and this is the best way to protect yourself. We in the I don't know, talking Minnesotan, but just say, we can't tell you have to do this, but a lot of guys are. and leave it at that, and let us know if you're having trouble, because then we can get help to you from Michigan State Police or National Guard, or we've got a cyber civilian corps to help make sure that you're putting those things in place. So we take them as really good ideas. Some of them we can't do because of money, but many of them are just kind of patching and simple blocking and tackling and just saying move this to the top of the list, and we say let's try and move that to the top of the list because that's where the attacks are coming.
Great, thank you. How about you, Jason?
So I have to admit, I was answering questions online, and I'm not sure what the question is that we're talking about. I did want to comment on one of the questions online live, though, so maybe I can jump to that.
Jason's on social media.
Jason, yeah, I see you. I see you. You were actually typing, and I could see it. So just about federal mandate. Federal guidance. You see a cyber executive order. You see NIST. Maybe NIST is a little different, but you see order. CISA has a zero trust policy. Maybe the Department of Defense comes out with something. How often do you align? And the original question actually was FedRAMP, and there's this thing called State Ramp, which I hadn't heard of.
So that's the one I just answered online too. So perfect. Yeah. Okay. So we look at a great many of those. We have a process within the state of Michigan called the Michigan Security Accreditation process. It is a NIST special publication 853 based assessment process. We also look at many other federal regulations that apply to us based on whether we get funding from a federal agency or it's a HIPAA organization or a CMS regulated organization or IRS Pub 1075. So we take all those overlays and apply those to our control foundations and baselines that we assess our applications and vendors on. With regards to FedRAMP and StateRAMP, those are both potential shared responsibility model control documents that we can look at and say, okay, based on the shared responsibility between the vendor and the state, these controls are met based on your documentation from StateRAMP, FedRAMP, or SOC 2 Type 2, and we would accept those as part of our accreditation process. Now, the other side of all that, many of those things are very static or point in time type of assessments, and we're really trying to migrate towards more of that. I think someone was talking about declarative model. I think it was Chris. That declarative model of, this is the state that things should be in, the declared state, and we try to monitor those on a regular basis so that we are more, regularly identifying when we have drift that would otherwise affect our security posture and potentially expose us to risks that we wouldn't otherwise know about, except for at each static point of reference. And so I think that's the big thing that we're really trying to do is move away from those specific static security assessments and automate them and orchestrate them in real time.
Great, good answer. Ray?
Oh man, all right. One of the things, that one of the hardest level of compliance, at least for us as agency, is the fact, okay, that we deal with criminal justice data. I believe, okay, there are only 4 agencies in the entire state of Texas, okay, that deal with criminal justice data. So that, again, that's the hardest, most difficult level of compliance to meet. Because of that, Tom, we were already looking, every time we were looking at vendors and anything like that, okay, that was the first thing, okay, that we would put as a requirement was, are they FedRAMP? Because if they were FedRAMP, they were already meeting 95% of the compliance requirement that we needed to meet, okay, in order to have criminal justice data in our possession, if that makes sense. Well, now we have something new, okay, TextRAMP. And if you go to the website, okay, it's very much, it looks identical. I mean, to WebRAMP, okay, the mission is very similar, but I guess it's the custom flavor version, okay, of FedRAMP, but for the state of Texas, right? The only difference is, okay, I see, okay, with the TextRAMP, okay, of Texas, is that they have different levels of certifications for the vendors. So they have like level 1, 2, and 3. So depending on the level that you are, okay, you have to have more or less complexity, okay, on your security requirements.
Great. And we're gonna let Joel finish this one because this is important. I'd like him to talk about it. But how about, I don't want to leave you out, Chris. I mean, in the university side, how much do federal policies, do you look at them and they affect you in your day-to-day?
Well, in terms of FedRAMP, that doesn't directly apply to us, but we do have tons of protected data, right? We work with HIPAA, FI, ITAR, EAR, DoD, DOE, and NIH data sets. And so for us, we focus on starting with 800-171, right, which is the NIST standard for protecting CUI data, controlled unclassified information. So all of our systems started with the CIS security benchmarks, and we Ansibleized most of that. So all of our systems, no matter what they're used for, desktops, laptops, whatever, have the Devops deployed 800-171 operating system controls. The second thing we do is started moving to a software-defined storage system. Software-defined storage systems really give you a lot of observability into what's happening that you normally don't have, allows isolation of disparate data sets, but also allows you to take advantage of economy of scale, because we support petabytes of data. Finally, when we start with a new data project, we always give them our 800-171 reports, which all the systems that we have data on require a 50+ page Word document with all the controls that are signed by the CISO, VP of Research, myself, and our Chief Technology Officer. And we then, on top of that, do additional changes for each particular project.
Great, thank you for that. And Joel, I know you guys are like working on the Department of Defense and Platform One. How does that translate, the work that you're doing in the DoD and DHS, et cetera, how does that translate for SLED?
I'll tell you, it's been a very busy Q3, right? If I just look at like the last 3 months, NIST and CISA and OMB and GSA, everybody's active and busy and pumping out tons of drafts and saying, could we just get a little insight? By the way, we'd like to add a consumer label that kind of looks like your can of soup, but it's for security stuff. Can you look at this too, right? I mean, it just keeps coming. The reality is it's great stuff, right? There's really, really good information coming out. And that general guidance, I think, is going to have a lot of best practices in store for everyone. Right. We're already getting a lot of questions from regulated industry just on the enterprise side of the house saying, hey, what's happening with the government agencies right now? What are they putting out? We want to make sure we're ahead of the game and we're complying. And one of the things that I've heard that I found most relevant, not only the cultural comment from earlier, but just the breadth of the security offering. Too often we're focused on a static secure model. And the reality is from a cybersecurity perspective, criminals have gotten way more sophisticated, right? Some of the stuff that's happened in the last year is pretty mind-blowing to me. In fact, I just read something this morning about credit card machine manipulation happening again from another source. It's just another way in. So I think it's really critical that not only are we testing a lot more often from a security perspective, but we're looking at our dependencies. We're looking at those licenses for products we may have pulled in from a third party and not quite paid attention to what that was. And it may expose us to something, or as we modernize our architectures and we put them in containers, are those containers secure? Because 9 times out of 10, the answer is no, they really weren't, right? So the broader we go with our scope, the more secure we're going to be. And I think the guidance that's coming out is going to continue to add more areas that we can monitor and provide us with easier solutions to that as well, right? As more and more people get on board with a similar way of doing it, it's going to simplify this for us. I really believe it.
Great. No, things are moving pretty quick on this webinar. I think we're almost out of time. So I want to get everybody to kind of talk about where you think you're going to be next year. I know at ATARC land, we're preparing for what we're going to work on next year. What are some of the things that you're trying to get implemented in your organization? And just, 30 seconds or so, 45 seconds. We'll start with you, Dr. Stillwell. So
our main focus is to get rid of the paper, like I said, so the digitalization of the entire ecosystem. It's going to be slow moving for me to introduce artificial intelligence here, because they really don't, they're attached to their machines like we were talking about earlier, and they want the machine to go with them. They don't want to have a open-ended, open your mind type of environment. So it's going to be a big cultural change, not only for the people in IT, which they're already going through it since I've been here, let me tell you. And now it's going to be outside of IT. So I'm going to bring you on next year to talk about this. I want to see what kind of progress. But all right, I know what you're up against. We'll be done by then. All right, I love it. Colonel Riddick?
We're looking at zero trust and securing our infrastructure internally, using those principles that they talk about in ZTA. That's very important. But I can tell you one of the things, and I think everyone will share this challenge, improving our hybrid remote work situation. It's now become a part of the culture, and it's going to be important that we standardize and formalize the way that our employees work from a process perspective, a security perspective, and a device perspective. And of course, connectivity packages all of that together. So how we improve our hybrid work environment is going to be key, because we're never going back to 1999 in terms of a work environment. And we're definitely going to have to figure that out and formalize it and package it in a way that it remains flexible and secure, but supportive.
Fantastic. Jason?
Yeah, I think I'll echo Colonel Riddick there. Understanding how we're going to continue to support the hybrid work environment, knowing that we have to do that for multiple reasons, one of which is just remaining viable in the workforce as an employer. We're feeling lots of pressure from other organizations that are allowing 100% work from home, and that being cited as reasons why candidates don't want to come work for us, because they know they got to be on site a little bit of time at least. So that's going to be very critical. I think, I would just echo again that zero trust architecture is going to be important to help and allow that. And then the Devsecops migration iteration for us also supports that hybrid work environment and allows us to do some of those things that Dr. Simmons talked about with regards to, working asynchronously and things like that through chat, through having task-based work oriented results.
Great. Thank you, Jason. Ray?
Next year, we're going to be taking Splunk to the next level, right? We were the first state agency to pilot, Splunk, from DIR, from the state. And as a result, we're the first agency to implement it. And now we're going to be using, for a cloud web applications monitoring and gathering, the data, for that. So that's our next project starting next year.
Great. Andy?
I'm going to support Jason doing what he said he was going to do. And I think we're working to marry up the left and right of boom. So we do a lot of work with preventing attacks on, whether it's on state government or local government. We ran a statewide exercise yesterday where we practiced a whole of state response to a coordinated attack on multiple local public entities. We're going to get good at that by the end of next year.
It's like, that's a military thing, right? Colonel Riddick, it's you practice it, you war game it, and that's how you get better.
We got Jason
Simmons,
from
are you guys
Jason
have-
from the Marines here to do that with us.
All right, okay, that's fantastic. And Dr. Simmons, are we gonna have some kind of quantum computer you're gonna invent by then, or?
I am working on that, but I can't discuss that in this this forum. But mainly the two things we're going to be working on is one, Kubernetes for science. We're really trying to replace these, as many places as we can, these huge monolithic supercomputers, because not only do they have huge attack surfaces, they're huge targets for foreign adversaries to get access to, because they provide very huge compute resources, and the operating systems don't receive regular updates because they're these huge monolithic systems. And furthermore, they're not being very agile. If there's one thing I've learned over the last year, my GPUs are never where they need to be. And then secondly, we're going to be focusing on education and teaching more scientists, DevOps, and in particular GitLab. Really, even within our own organization, the disconnect between the people who know how to use the tools and those who don't are dramatic. So I'm going to be focusing a lot more on outreach and teaching people the tools of automation and how to use them for science, or developing a science as code platform.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to hit you up on quantum. We're really, that group is kind of in its nascent early days, but we're working with the White House and some other folks on that. That's good stuff.
Well,
Joel,
my
you take us.
My PhD is in quantum chemistry, and I've done a lot of quantum computing.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll be in touch. And then Joel, where are you headed with GitLab? Where do you think you guys will be next year?
Well, I'll just have to piggyback off of what Dr. Simmons was just talking about. Like, we want to enable people to have that ability to do those scans on a regular basis. And what we're trying to do is templatize and automate that to the point where you don't have to do a lot of enablement, right? The whole idea of, here's your template, go run the following security jobs by just uncommenting a line in the code. Or here's your pipeline out of the box. Sure, you can tweak it later, but it's automated. It's auto DevOps. Go do your thing. From there, a year from now, the same thing's going to apply to remediation, right? So, hey, the scans have run. Here's our suggestions for remediation. Do you want to push the button and have that done or not? Right? That's the concept we're chasing after, so that, because it's one thing to identify, it's another thing to remediate what you've found. And so our goals soon are not only to increase the breadth, but make that remediation far smoother process for everybody involved.
Great. Thank you for that, Joel. And that is the last word. Thank you, Tony, Jason, Teresa, Joel, Andy, Ray, Christopher. Been a great discussion. Enjoyed it a lot. And thank you for the audience. Lots of great questions. We appreciate it. We're going to have a little final poll. If you need a CPE credit, if you can just click on, hang on, not that one, guys. Yeah, the final one with the yes and no. So great. So if you've done everything and you need to fill it out, we'll send this to you. This is self-service here. We're going to be able to send you a CPE. You don't have to send us a separate email.
All you got to do is ask. All you got to do is ask.
All you got to do is ask, right? It comes to you. Great stuff. And we have an event for next week. Maybe not, because this is SLED. All right. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining, and we'll catch you the next time.